Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and if a few more people log in, great, but don't want to have too many of you just sitting here waiting for us to get started. So welcome to our monthly webinar series. I am Matt Firestone, president of Firestone Consulting Group, based here in Lincoln, Nebraska. As you can see, today's webinar is What's Holding You Back? Changing your mindset to achieve more. This is one of those topics that see quite frequently as we're working with some of our clients, whether that's with an executive coaching type arrangement or even with some of the consulting that we're doing with contractors around the country. That a lot of time it really is just a mindset that they have that's limiting their growth as a company. Maybe some of them are individuals that mindset's holding them back from achieving the success that they are wanting to have, maybe in their current role or wanting to move up the corporate ladder in their organization. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is identifying what some of these limiting mindsets are and look at some ways that we can go about changing that mindset to achieve more. There we go. Like I said, I'm Matt Firestone, president of Firestone Consulting Group. See a lot of familiar names here on our attendees list today. So a lot of you know what it is that we do. For those of you that are new to our webinar series, we do offer these webinars the last Wednesday of every month with the hopes that we can share some of our thoughts, some of our ideas on topics that are relevant to contractors of all sorts. We work a lot with electrical contractors, but are starting to expand our reach to working with some other specialty trades and even some general contractors. Real high level, Firestone Consulting Group, we work with the leaders and owners in the construction industry to help them build businesses for the lifestyle that they desire. We do this through helping them to leverage their people, develop well-oiled systems to better operate their business. Our proven methods are based on real-world experiences in running and growing contracting businesses. With years of hands-on experience, our team of advisors and consultants will work with you to help you define your goals, develop a plan to achieve them, guide you in implementing the plan, and most importantly, be right there with you to celebrate your successes. We would like to thank our sponsor of today's webinar, McCormick Systems LLC, which has some exciting news in the last month. They are now part of Foundation Software Company. McCormick themselves is the nation's leader in estimating and project management software. Whether you're a one-man shop or a multi-million-dollar company, McCormick has an estimating and project management solution that'll work for you. I'm a firm believer and supporter of McCormick. I've used it actually since 1996, so I've seen a lot of the advancements that they've had over the years. Still work with contractors to help them implement McCormick and do some training to get their teams up and running to use McCormick's product within their estimating process. So looking at today's webinar, like we talked before as I introduced the webinar, we're looking at what are those limiting beliefs or limiting mindsets that are keeping us from achieving the successes that we want to achieve, maybe as the owner of the company, some of those financial goals or successes that we have. But these same ideas and principles still hold true to us as individuals as we try to further our careers, try to make advancements within the company that we are currently working for, and maybe in some cases, for some individuals that want to go out and start their own business. So in today's webinar, we're going to look at defining what a limiting belief is, identify how limiting beliefs affect our success, and hopefully change your mindset to help you achieve more. So when we look at, what are limiting beliefs or a limiting mindset, a lot of it revolves around perceptions or how we see the world. So let's take, for example, a rabbit. And you can see with some of the images I have here on the screen, some people might perceive or have a perception that a rabbit is a cute, cuddly animal. Others might think that it's a tasty meal. For some, they might see a rabbit as a pest that eats their crops, or maybe a disease carrying varmint, or an important part of our ecosystem. Too many times we let our own perceptions get in the way of our progress and success because of the level of fact that we place on those. So again, we're not talking right or wrong. It's how we perceive the world based on our experiences, based on what we have seen. But sometimes our mind is powerful, but it can be, and it can play tricks on us and get us to think and start believing something that maybe we don't have all the information around, but we do hold that as fact. When we start looking at these limiting beliefs, we're going to talk a little bit about false priorities. It's kind of like we start to operate on autopilot, or almost like we're asleep at the wheel and not truly in control of our own success. We see this to be even more prevalent when we are in times of stress. That could be on a day-to-day basis, when there's challenges that we're facing at work, maybe challenges we're facing in our career. But we can also have influences that we might be having stress at home or in other parts of our life, that when we do start getting and experiencing these stressful times, we tend to fall back on our own ways and just start going through the motions instead of truly staying focused on our plan for achieving success. In many cases, as humans, as managers, as leaders, whatever that is, we don't even know that we're really slipping into these old habits or limiting our own success. Like I said, through some of our engagements with our clients, whether that's one-on-one or working with companies, I'm amazed at the number of individuals that we've actually come across that don't realize that it's their own mindset that is truly the limiting factor in their success. They have the resources, they have the team, they have the recipe, the formula for success, but there's something in the back of their mind that's really causing the limitations on what they truly could achieve. So when we talk about what it is that is limiting our success, we're going to look at kind of two general categories, or maybe we want to call these two mindsets that we might look at for limiting our success. And we talked about, with the illustration with the rabbit, it's limiting perceptions that we have. False priorities would be choosing to be something other than being successful. When we look at limiting beliefs, this is a belief that we hold about ourselves that's holding us back. In both cases, we are looking at our internal perceptions that may be limiting our success. It's not looking at any of the outside factors, economy, lack of qualified employees, maybe some financial things. We're looking at what are those personal limiting factors that are in our control. We've done some other presentations and looking at success, and really what we have to dial into is what's truly in our control that we can make changes in. So when we look at false priorities, just a general blanket statement here is, would you rather be blank than successful? So some common false priorities that we, see or hear as we're working with individuals would be, somebody that wants to look good as opposed to being successful. So this is somebody that would rather look good than truly focus on getting results. These are some of those people that tend to shift blame. They want to take all the credit, that it's all about looking good, even at the cost of their success. Enjoying prestige. They want that fancy title. They want the best office. They're always comparing themselves to others within the organization. A lot of times it's people that they would rather be right than be successful. And, there's times that I'll say myself that I've fallen into that category that, I truly believe in something. And at that moment in time, being right is more important than the overall success of that project or even in my own career. So it's being aware of that. They want to get credit as opposed to being successful. So this kind of goes back to looking good, maybe even enjoying that prestige, that they're all about making sure that they get credit and not acknowledging some of the others that helped that project, the company, to be successful. That they want to be smart as opposed to successful. That it's, coming to a meeting and trying to be the smartest person in the room. It's trying to catch somebody with a technicality or something like that, that they derail the success of the meeting or the project because they want to show everyone in the room how smart they are. In some cases, it's wanting to be funny as opposed to being successful. And it's there's times for humor in any organization. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is looking back to maybe school days and the class clown. That's what they're maybe it's a popularity thing, that they feel that they're liked by being funny. We still see that even in the corporate environment. Along these same lines, it's being interesting or being eccentric. That it's, we're not focused on the end result. It's how can we, come in and be distracting from everybody else. Maybe it's a hairstyle, maybe it's the type of clothes that we wear, however we present ourselves in meetings with individuals, or the like. And the next one here, being liked as opposed to being successful. And this is one of those that I probably see most often with younger managers or people that are in their first management and leadership role, that it's all about being liked by their direct reports, their peers, and sometimes they lose track of the overall success, the big picture, because they're so worried about being liked, as opposed to achieving success through being respected by everyone else. In some cases, it's having peace and harmony with your team and trying to avoid conflict at almost any cost. Those that have been around or are more experienced than some of the others in the audience today know that conflict is pretty much unavoidable, especially in the construction industry when we're working with multiple trades, multiple owners, those types of things. But to some level, conflict is healthy. That's what drives things and moves things forward. But again, we see this, having peace and harmony on your team, maybe with somebody new to a role or new to an organization, that they just want everybody to get along at the expense of the success of the company. Sometimes people want to be perfect as opposed to being successful, that it's all about making sure that we have all the information, all the data, that it's when we fall into this analysis paralysis mentality of we can't make a decision, we can't move forward until we know all the facts, we've vetted all the variables to make that perfect decision. Sometimes it's people that want to be the hero rather than, let the team fail. They always come swooping in at the end like Superman, and try to become that hero. I've even seen some individuals where they even structure the team or set the stage to where there is that perception that things are going to fail just so they can have that superhero complex on almost every project they're involved with. Be above it all. This is the aloof manager who won't deal with the masses, that they sit in their corner office, maybe they're up on their soapbox, but they're above everyone else for whatever reason they have that mindset. For some, it's they look to escape or hide out, that they try to avoid the situation, the scenario, the individuals, whatever that is, when the going gets tough. They hole up, they go and hide out, wait for the storm to calm, and then they reappear and think business is as usual. Kind of along these same lines is, avoid being involved. Tend to throw your hands up when things go wrong. maybe cast blame on somebody else, but it's just that, well, I want to step away. I don't want to be part of this. You go and figure it out. And then the last one here that we see a lot of times is that I told you so mentality of, setting people up for failure, and then, being right there. And it's, again, detracting from the success, from the achievement, just so that you kind of going back to being right, that I told you so mentality. Some other things might be trying to get attention, maybe dominate, maybe it's even to thwart or sabotage someone else in your organization. When we look at limiting beliefs, again, we're talking about perceptions. When we look at limiting beliefs, this is a mindset that we have about ourselves that's holding us back. So common limiting beliefs would be, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't trust other people, I need to be in control, I'm not likable, I think that conflict is bad, I can't make a decision without perfect information, I can't let anything leave my office until it's perfect. Anytime I fail, it means that I'm a failure. So again, we're talking about these mindsets that we might have. Maybe you've heard yourself saying these, maybe not all the time, but it's that little voice in the back of your mind that you hear, or maybe you hear others on your team. Some of the other limiting beliefs is no one can do it as well as I can. This is one that we see a lot with growing companies. Maybe it's the first generation owner. And that's really what's holding them back from achieving that next level of success, because they're afraid to leverage their team and the talents of everybody else that's working for them, that they've been there since day one. They've got, their blood, sweat, and tears into this business, into this company, that no one can do it quite as well as they can. I can't find good people. I need to be liked. This project or company is my baby. Again, something that we see all the time, especially when we start getting into succession planning and we look at that first generation transitioning to sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, that they have that emotional attachment to the company or to that project, and they just can't let go. Only I can get this done. I need to stay in control. Again, we see this control issue. We see this emotional attachment a lot when we start talking about succession planning. Amazing things never happen to me. We've talked in some of our other programs with looking at our power base or our professional network, and how can we align ourselves with some of those other individuals that seek us out when they find those opportunities that align with what solutions our company can provide, or how do we as individuals within a company be the ones that are sought out to solve certain strategic problems for the organizations. And then the last one here is I can't show people my human side. And this again is one of those, I see it probably more often in younger, maybe first time managers, leaders, that they want to prop themselves up, they want to be perfect, that they just can't show that they are human, that they do make mistakes, and more importantly, learn from those mistakes. So with any of these perceptions, I like to use the analogy of a vinyl record. Of course, we don't have everybody's ages here and the attendees. I would assume the majority of you have seen or know what a record is. Maybe there are some younger ones in the audience today that aren't familiar with what a vinyl record is. But when you think about it, our thoughts are like the grooves in a record. The longer that we've had these thoughts or beliefs, the deeper those grooves are. Those of you that have played vinyl records, that that needle moves through those grooves, and that's what makes the sounds, and that's really what shaped that vinyl record. In a lot of the same ways, what has shaped our perceptions and our mindsets over time. So what we look at doing when we're working with our clients is helping them to change that perception. So you can see with the image here that a lot of times it may not be a question of right or wrong. You can see in the image here, the number on the ground there, depending on how you're looking at it, real similar to our illustration with the rabbits. But in this case, is the gentleman on the right or the woman on the left, are either of them right or wrong? Well, no, based on their perception of what they're looking at there, in their mind, they both are right. We know that we're not going to be able to change our inherent beliefs, but what we look to do is change our perceptions about these beliefs. And when we do so, we can begin to develop new beliefs, new perceptions, and new attitudes of how we can see these limiting factors. As an executive coach, I work with my clients on how to choose an alternative perception and make it a habit. And this goes right back to the belief that we have with really all the programs that we have at Firestone Consulting Group is, action and accountability equal results. So we have to, create that action. And in this case here with these limiting beliefs, we're trying to develop those new habits that become stronger than some of the old ones that affect those beliefs. And that's where having someone within your organization, working with an executive coach, working with someone to help with that accountability, that's really where we see the results driven home. So let's explore a little bit of how we might work with one of our clients and create a plan for success through commitment, discipline, and of course, practice. We know that these changes aren't going to happen overnight, just like with our example with the record. These grooves that we have in our mind are pretty deep. They've been there over time because of our experiences. So we're not looking at changing those, but what we're looking at doing is maybe creating some new grooves that are a little bit stronger and maybe can detract from some of those other ones. So the first step is identifying the limiting belief or false priority that we have that's holding us back. So looking back to those lists of the false priorities of what you would rather be than being successful, or those limiting mindsets that are keeping you from achieving the success that you want to achieve. The second step then is reframing our perceptions. So let's look at some of the techniques that we could use to reframe these perceptions. So you can see here, we're going to talk about 4 different techniques that we use with our clients. If then, a mantra, creative alternative, and metaphor. So then when we look at the if then technique, maybe this is for someone that has issues with trusting their employees. A lot of times we know that limiting beliefs are the result of a blanket statement. I can't trust anyone. All millennials are lazy. It's that we're casting a wide net, a general net that everyone falls into that group. Of course, if we're looking at employees, there's probably some employees that you can trust, but you start getting that mindset that you can't trust anyone. Looking at millennials, I know some Gen X, Gen Y, some baby boomers are just as lazy as some of the millennials that I've worked with. And I also know some millennials that are some of the hardest working people that I've worked with as well. So let's look a little bit deeper into the trust issue, as this is one that I probably see more commonly, especially with working with business owners. So again, looking at this, if then, if you're struggling with trusting others, maybe it is if I give my employees the training, the support, and the resources that they need, then they will get the job done. So we have our if, we talk about giving them the training, the support, and the resources, then they're going to be able to get the job done. If you notice in my if then statement, nowhere does it mention trust, because we don't want to fall back into those grooves in the record. We don't want to compete with this long-standing belief we have. What we're trying to do is reframe it and start thinking of it in a different way. The next one is mantra. Again, and you can see here the little engine that could, I think I can, I think I can. Maybe some of you have used mantras before, but it's a short phrase or a statement that you can repeat to yourself And it helps us get ourselves in that right frame of mind. So again, maybe back to that trusting of employees, maybe every time you go into that team meeting or that you're going to have that interaction with someone that you're struggling with that trust issue, that you repeat to yourself, support them, support them, support them. You can do it under your breath. Maybe you say it out loud in your office before you go and have that interaction. But a mantra is another technique that we can use to help us reframe that mindset to get beyond that limiting belief. Creative alternative, using an example here from author Patrick Lencioni, and I would say he's one of the masters in creative alternatives. In his book, The 5 Temptations of a CEO, Lencioni describes common false priorities or temptations, as he describes them, many CEOs have. The 5 temptations that he revealed in the book are status, being popular, harmony, invulnerability, and need for perfect information. Well, for those of you, maybe some of you have read the book, others that not, I'm going to go ahead and give you his creative alternatives. But instead of status, he's looking at results that we know that if we achieve those results that are set out for us, or maybe it's the goals that we have, that we're going to achieve that status that we're seeking. Instead of being popular, it's looking at being respected by our peers, by our direct reports, by our colleagues. Instead of looking at how we can create that harmony amongst everyone, maybe it's that we know that there's going to be conflict, and we look for that appropriate conflict that's going to drive and move things forward. That invulnerability, maybe it's looking at how we can trust more people, that we can leverage our team, leverage our employees, and be able to trust them to make the decisions that need to be made, that they can have the same successes. They're going to treat the customers the way that we have from day one, that we're going to be able to free ourselves up and be able to do more of those high value tasks. And then the last one there, need for perfect information. And it's looking at, a creative alternative would be making quick decisions. So what information do we need to make those timely decisions to keep things moving forward? Then the last one here is metaphor. And to kind of explain a little bit with the statement I have there on the screen, my knowledge and expertise are my farm. The example that I'm using here actually came from the executive coaching certification program that I went through. And in one of the sessions, the presenter told of working with a client that was younger than his peers and struggling to find the value that he brought to the table. As this coach and his client worked together, it was revealed that the client felt that he didn't have value to offer because he associated value with something tangible, something more physical. As they continued to work together, the client described growing up on a farm and that his parents owned. And eventually they sold that farm to become financially independent. Initially, he saw the value in the farm as being the crops that his family sold. But when reframing and working with his coach, he looked at what was actually sold in the end, and it was the value the farm had, the good soil, lots of land, that really was the value. It wasn't the individual crops. And this helped him to then realize that his knowledge, his expertise, those things that he had internally to him were his farm, and that's truly the value that he brought to the table. Maybe it wasn't the same knowledge or the same experience of his peers, but he had his own knowledge and experience that he could share those new ideas with his colleagues. So the next step, after we've looked at how to reframe it, is that now we need to choose a new behavior to support that reframed belief. So our goal with this step is to develop a more effective behavior or habit than what we are currently using. So we identified that limiting belief, that false priority. we reframed it, maybe a more positive way of looking at it. Back to the example of trust. We didn't say that I'm going to trust them more or trust them. It's be supportive. It's give them the tools, the resources, those type of things. Well, now we need to create that action plan of how we're going to develop a more effective behavior or habit that's going to help us be successful. How can we have more positive perceptions, a leader's attitude, and a more productive way of seeing the world? Let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these techniques. So the yes and technique, I guess it's looking at the yes and versus the no but, which is probably the most common thing that we see in most organizations. Leaders look to build on ideas, on vision and possibility. So the yes and technique actually comes from the world of improv comedy and acting. Maybe some of you are Saturday Night Live fans. Maybe some of you have been to a comedy club where you have multiple individuals on the stage. But it's taking and accepting what the other person says and building on it. So it's welcoming those new ideas and not shutting down those ideas right away. So it's taking that thought or that idea that somebody states that they bring to you, acknowledging, recognizing, and then yes and adding more to it, and then kind of having this banter go back and forth, continuing to build on those thoughts and ideas and really see where it goes. And it's looking at the possibilities, looking at the vision, building upon those ideas to achieve and find even better ideas than what we have. Second technique is vision. And one thing that I think a lot of leaders miss out on is vision itself doesn't drive results, but really vision is a great starting point. It helps us see where we're trying to go. We can see the big picture, we can shift our perspective to the future, but then we need to bring it back to the present to help us create that strategy, those tactics, and the steps that we're going to take along the way. Again, your vision should be beyond your small petty wants. The vision should be more about what is possible. It's taking out, removing all those stops. And if you had that perfect world, if you had that crystal ball and you could look a year, 3 years, 5, maybe 10 years into the future without any restrictions, what is truly possible? The I care technique is it's when you care about the success of others, they too will care about your successes. So this is caring more, care about more than yourself, and good things will happen to you. So when you care about the success of each of your employees, your team members, you care about the key strategic initiatives, you care about the overall organization success, everything starts to rise to the top and everyone becomes successful and wins together. Looking at the I can technique, this is taking responsibility for our own impact and results. Leaders get things done and tend to have a positive attitude even when faced with challenges. So maybe looking at the example of that new manager or a young individual that's in an organization, it's looking at taking responsibility of, maybe it's the relationship between that employee and their boss. Maybe it isn't as strong as it could be. That employee shouldn't blame the boss. What they need to do is take ownership, work to understand their boss and improve that relationship from their standpoint. And I think this is again where, not to get way off track here with our overall topic for the program, but the difference between managing and leading, that we do know that we can lead from anywhere within the organization. And to me, this I can technique here is one of those prime examples of even a subordinate or a direct report being that leader and taking charge of their own results by improving that relationship with the manager and not relying on that manager or the more senior person for the success of that relationship. One of the other ones is focusing on the outcomes. And little bit more to this here is it's really easy to get anyone to do almost anything one time if you don't care about the relationship. But we know to be successful, it's more of a balancing act between relationships, results, and our own egos. That, again, it goes back to that false priority. Would you rather be successful than right, smart, or be the one with the fanciest car? That it's looking at what is it big picture wise that's going to make me be successful, and that's what I need to focus on, are the outcomes that are going to drive success. And I think this one here is probably one of my favorites, and we call it the success laboratory. It's the science of success, and what does the data say? That it's having a mindset of learning and getting better. It's looking at what is working, what isn't working, but looking at both instances is really just data points, and how do we build upon what works and eliminate what doesn't. It's not having that I failed, so I'm a failure mindset. It's taking those hurdles, those bumps in the road, looking at them as a data set, and not taking it personal, but fixing what's wrong and keep moving forward. And looking at it as some progress is better than no progress at all. So here's what I would like you to do. If you have a notepad or a piece of paper nearby, I'd like you to take out a sheet of paper, grab a pen or a pencil, and we're going to go through a little bit of an activity here. If you don't have paper and pencil handy, this is being recorded, so you could go back and work through this activity yourself at a later time. But what I want you to do is take your paper, and we're going to end up dividing it up into 4 columns. So that's our vertical pieces, and then 15 rows. So we're going to set up our page to look something like this. We're going to have that first column, and the heading are going to be cost, and you can see some of the potential cost. And what we're going to look at here is, what are these limiting perceptions, our false priorities, these limiting beliefs truly costing us in our overall success? And you can see here with my list of costs that I'm not looking at just business. We're looking at our family, our personal lives, our self, our person, our health. So what I want you to do, list those costs down the left-hand side. And then in the next column, put now at the top. And I want you to kind of go and maybe it's, taking a moment here, think a little bit about what one of those limiting beliefs is that you're currently struggling with, or maybe it's a false priority. If you want, you can jot it down at the top of the page. If you don't want anybody to see what that is, that's totally fine too. But think in the back of your mind, or let's bring it to the front of our mind so it is current here. But what is this limiting belief, this false priority, truly costing you? Can you put a dollar amount on, the overall cost of this belief? Maybe from a business standpoint, you could relate it to the sales and profit that it's costing you. Is there any effect on your employees? What about the quality and service that you're offering your customers? Start looking at maybe your home life. Is there any personal time costs that you have here? Family. Maybe some of you have young families at home. Maybe some of you have grandkids. You're missing out on some of those family things. Start getting into things that relate more to our health. Does it have any effect or cost on our sleep? What about our eating habits? About tension in our body, posture, vitality, any other health costs that we can think of? What about our overall feeling of self-worth? And any other costs that you might think of? I'll give you just a moment here, and if you want, you could get your page structured and work through this a little bit later. But we want to look at it now at this current state. If we had to put a bookmark in our journal today and list these 15 costs, this is how we would look at it. Now, what I would like you to do in that third column is look at it 1 year from now. So if we still continue to have this limiting belief, this false priority, what does that cost you 1 year from now? So think of this as kind of like your 401k statement. We see what it is today. We see some of those forecasting things of where we're going to have or how much money we're going to have in our retirement account when we retire. Well, let's look at the same thing here with this cost. What is it costing us today? But if we continue to live with this limiting belief, what is it going to cost us a year from now? And then in the last column here, I want you to put 5 years from now. So now we're going to have to look into that crystal ball and really do some, maybe some soul searching here of what does this look like if I continue to have this limiting belief, this false priority 5 years from now. So as you work through, each of these columns, each of these rows, I would suggest that you look at now and finish that column before you move on to the 1 year and the 5 year, but then take and digest that information. Like we talked about with the Success Laboratory, all of this is data. It's information that we can then make decisions, make adjustments, and move forward from. But of course, we don't want to live in the past. We don't want to look at the negative side of things. We talked about, leaders, successful people think about, the positives. What is it that I can do to change, make things better, and take control of my success and my achievements? So what benefits will you see? What's in it for you if we do make these changes, that you change this perception, that you start to create and develop these new habits? So you could flip your piece of paper over, and as opposed to costs, we're going to look at the benefits. You can see that I have the same list on the left-hand side there, that I have my now column. I have my 1 year from now and my 5 years from now. So go through the exact same exercise that you did before of that cost. How is that detrimental to your success? And now look at it as once we've reframed that, once we've changed that mindset, and we are taking responsibility, we are owning our own achievement, our own success. What does that look like in the short term? What does that look like 1 year from now? What does that look 5 years from now for ourselves, for us as an individual, for our business, for our career? So with all this information, and I know we covered a lot of this in a short amount of time, but hopefully you feel that you're off to a good start. We talked about what limiting beliefs are. We talked a little bit about false priorities. Hopefully now you know, at least at a high level, how to reframe those limiting beliefs, how to put that into a more positive, into a better way of seeing things. We know how to create a new perception or a new attitude that's going to help us develop those habits. Again, we're not looking at erasing or changing those deep grooves that we have in our own internal vinyl record, but how can we create new grooves that become stronger than the previous ones? And then the last part we did here is, knowing what those limiting beliefs are costing you, but then on the flip side there, it's looking at what are those benefits? How can that help us be more successful? I'm going to leave you with a quote here before we open it up to any questions that anyone has. Brendan Burchard here is a New York Times best-selling author, best known for his book, High Performance Habits. But I thought this was a great quote for the topic that we were discussing today is, I'm not interested in your limiting beliefs. I'm interested in what makes you limitless. So, stop and think about that for just a moment. Maybe you relate it to the, glass half empty versus glass half full. But really, it is that mindset. It's how we look to the future, how we recognize maybe some of those internal challenges that we have, change that mindset and start to develop those habits that are going to help us achieve the successes that we're truly capable of achieving. It's not just that we want to achieve, it's looking at achieving those things that we know that we truly are capable of achieving. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to any questions. Feel free to use the question and answer feature of Zoom. You can put it in the chat. If you are connected with audio with a microphone, feel free to raise your hand. I think I can unmute you from my end. Would love to have you ask that question. If you would like to reach us or reach myself, there's my contact information, our web address, my email, and our phone number. Again, thank you to McCormick Systems for sponsoring today's webinar. You can reach Todd and his team at McCormicksys.com. So with that, thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Again, these are the last Wednesday of every month, 11 o'clock Central Time. So don't see any questions. I will hold tight for another moment or so. Okay, so I have one here. What if the limitations are from the personnel that are in positions above you at your organization? Chris, great question. This is one of those that is definitely challenging. We talk in some of our programs is really we can only change what we're in control of. I would say I'd love to have an offline conversation with you to learn a little bit more about the situation. But I think for when you have challenges with others in your organization, especially those that might be above you in that org chart or in the food chain there, it's maybe introducing them to programs like this. Have the link to the recording and share that with them of, man, I attended this webinar, or here's some information, here's an article I read. I really think that if we could implement some of these ideas, it's going to change our culture of our company, of our organization for the better. Just think of the successes that we could have. I did a talk, I guess it was the end of January, with a group of contractors, and I used Tom Brady as an example. He's a leader on the field, but there was a whole new dynamic that he brought to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this last year. He's not the owner of the company, not the general manager, not the head coach, not an offensive coordinator. If you put together an org chart for the Buccaneers, he'd fall, that middle level manager. But he is a dynamic leader, and he was able to influence and get others that were above him in that org chart to truly buy into what was possible as far as their success goes as a team. Those of you that followed the Buccaneers, early in the season, they had some struggles, but they started to work those kinks out and then ended up winning the Super Bowl. And in some of the post game interviews with the head coach, he said it was Tom Brady that got us all to believe, helped us to understand what's possible, that it wasn't the people at the top. So I guess in a long-winded answer, Chris, it's sometimes, being in the middle of the organization, we have to be the ones that step up, take that leadership initiative, and try to get everyone else around us. It's looking at, how do we look at our internal power base and find some of those other people that support our ideas, that are bought into what we're trying to do, and have them help spread that, get other people interested, excited about what is possible. Hopefully that helped answer your question a little bit there. I know it was a little long-winded. Like I said, happy to have a conversation with you outside of the webinar. Feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call and we can chat a little bit more. So again, thank you everyone for attending the webinar. We will be sending out a link to the recording. Hope to see all of you and others from your company or in your network at our future webinars. Have a great Wednesday and have a great rest of your week.